Hi everyone, welcome. We're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. Get everybody logged on. And Bruce, I don't know if you mind, but you're sharing your screen so that we can see all of your notes.
Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. Perfect. Let's share this one.
Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll get started. Just a couple minutes here.
Is that the right one?
Yes.
Okay.
That looks great.
It's moving.
Anna's put the information for AEE in the chat box. If you would like to put where you're from, that's great too. We'd love to see where everybody's coming from today. Got the Philippines and Ireland already represented. Minneapolis, Wisconsin. Wow. Jakarta, Chattanooga, they're all popping up so quickly. All over the place. Great, y'all. It's so good to see everybody. To see where you're from, at least. We can't see you, but. Awesome. Wonderful. Well, it's a little after 1, and we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Sherry Bagley. I'm the Executive Director for the Association for Experiential Education, and we are a membership organization, and we are all about all of the people who practice experiential education in all the different ways. So our organization is about 1,800 members strong, and we are providing this webinar series for the pandemic in order to help everyone out. We believe in coming together as a community, and so one of the things that we've been doing during this time is opening up our past webinar series to anyone who would like to see those, and then providing these new ones that are about things that are affecting our current situation. So you can find all of those on our website, which is www.aee.org, and I'm sure Anna is typing that into the chat box right now. We also have a community resource library that is updated constantly, and we just put up, I don't know if any of you are interested, but we just put up the CDC has produced guidelines for reopening camps and outdoor programs, and that information just got put up on our website, and it's also the ACA's, the American Camping Associations, has been. So that's some really good information. I know a lot of folks have been waiting to see what those guidelines are for reopening. And so we also, besides that community resource library and our webinars, we have roundtable chats. So every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, we have those. And an international one that happens once a month earlier in the morning to help with those folks who are around the other side of the globe, come to them. I know some of you are here and it's very early in the morning, so thank you all for joining us. But those roundtable chats are a place for you all to come together and just share thoughts, ideas, things that are working, things that aren't working, ask questions. They're not a webinar, there's no content presented, but it's just a forum for you all to get together. So if you haven't joined us on one of those, please do so. We'd love to see you. And you can also join our organization at www.aee.org and gain all the benefits from being a member. So we'll go ahead and get started. Today we have Bruce Saxman. Bruce is a professor at the University of Idaho. He's the clinical assistant professor and coordinator for the RSTM program in outdoor recreation and leadership minor. And I looked up Bruce because he presented last year at the AOR-AEE International Conference about experiential education online. And that has been one of the things that our members have been clamoring for. Everybody's doing so many things virtually. So I asked Bruce if he could share some of his insights. And so we really appreciate him being here today. Thanks so much, Bruce.
All right, thanks, Sherry. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Like Sherry said, I'm a clinical professor at the University of Idaho. And so this is very much coming from a practitioner standpoint. I don't have a PhD, I have a master's degree. I'm very much an avid experiential educator, adventure educator. I really value field time with my students and relating to them in person. In addition to teaching, I'm also an avalanche educator and ski guide, and I manage a rafting company in the summer. So I'm very much a hands-on person, an in-person person. So when we found out that portions of our program would have to go online a couple years ago, like I was about ready to walk away. Like it seems pretty like antithetical to everything that I enjoy in education. It was pretty rough at first. But as I started to investigate some of the opportunities and ways that you could teach online or at a distance and still create an experiential component to your courses, I started to get a little more encouraged. I'm still very much learning, I guess I got a little bit of a head start with COVID-19, which I was super thankful for. So just to let you know, that's where I'm coming from. There's still things that I really struggle with distance and online education, but I'm hoping that I can share with you what I've learned today that has helped, and share some of my successes as well as some of my failures. And because this is something we've all been thrown into recently, and for once in my life, I'm like just one step ahead. So that'll just give you a little perspective of where I'm coming from here. I was also really fortunate that the dean of our college allowed a lot of us, as we started to make this transition, to participate in an online learning certificate course from the University of Wisconsin. And that's been super helpful. So a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today came directly out of that certificate program that I completed back in January. So, but I wanted to start out just to see where you all are coming from. So curious to know what your beliefs are about online teaching and learning. And we're going to put up, I need to stop share, right?
Yeah, Anna will take it over.
I'm going to stop the share for mine. And if you can go to Mentimeter, take a minute and go to mentimeter.com and enter that code in, and enter just like 1 or 2 words about what your beliefs are about online teaching and learning, either positive or negative or somewhere in the middle. That would be great. And we'll have a little word map that pops up, and we can have a short discussion on this so I can know where to tailor our discussion.
And you can use your phone, or you can open another window on your computer screen to go to the menti.com.
Fun. Whoa. So lots of things that really reflect my thoughts as well. I see time consuming as like staring me right in the face. It's possible, it's difficult, introvert friendly. Yeah, introverts, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm definitely a social introvert. It can be a little scary, but challenging, I think, is like the biggest thing popping up so far. And it is challenging to put experiential content into this distance and online environment. The other thing I noticed is still moving around was things like needed or possible. One of the things that I've been really aware of over the past couple of years is education is moving this way, whether we like it or not. And so knowing how to use online opportunities for teaching it does seem like it's going to become a necessity in the future. Flexibility I see is a huge one. I live in Durango, Colorado, not Northern Idaho. And so that kind of flexibility has been huge for me, so I could be with my family and still make a living. Inequitable has been really brought to the forefront with COVID-19, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about challenges. I like that some people put creative, and I'll share some of those. I'm constantly surprised what my students come up with some of the assignments. Sometimes they're not that great, but some of the good ones are really good. And they're able to do things that they couldn't have otherwise done in the classroom. Lack of engagement. I think that theme is really, it's a challenge, a big challenge, but it's part of challenging is how do we engage our students in this type of environment? And yeah, got a few more. Accessibility, it's either accessible or inaccessible depending on who you are. It can be really confusing. I'm just locking onto different words here. So I think we can go, cool. So I think everyone kind of mirrors like my experience and my thoughts as well, and probably most people's. We can probably move back to presentation here. And so make sure I got the right one. Cool. So, and Sherry, that right screen is popping up there?
Yes.
Cool. And so one of the real challenges I've had with this is I didn't learn this way, and a lot of us haven't learned this way. I've never taken an online course in my life until I took that online certificate program. And so I didn't really even know what it looked like. But I think something to understand is our students today, high school students and college, are taking online classes. And this was even before COVID-19. For instance, my partner's daughter is an athlete. She's a really talented mountain biker. And she's been doing online classes for a year now. And it gives her the flexibility to train. And it's something she really connects with. Her younger daughter hates it though. So, cause she's very much a social learner like I am. So I want to show you this video. It's about 4 minutes long. It is a little dated at this point. It's from 2012, but it gives you some perspective on where students are coming from as they enter our classrooms. Sorry about that. So just kind of a reminder that technology is very much a part of what we're doing right now. And it's that when I first saw that video, it just really reinforced to me that how I need to be open-minded to this. And just like we ask our students to be open-minded to the things that we're teaching, and that there can be different ways of doing things. And so I also, just to throw out there, if anyone has any questions during the presentation at any time, go ahead and ask it in the chat. And I think Anna or Sherry are going to interrupt me and ask those questions. So at any time, go ahead and ask. But what do we know about online education? Just on the surface, the majority of the research that's out there doesn't show any significant difference in student learning in traditional versus online courses. In 2015, over 1 million students were enrolled in distance education at the high school level. And in 2016, over 30% of all college students had taken at least one online class. And so this isn't super new. And I know wilderness first responder classes, avalanche courses have been using hybrid models for to deliver their content for years now. And so again, I know it's, especially with COVID-19, it's a huge thing, and declining enrollments, it's been an issue for a while, but distance education isn't anything super new. Things that students report that are factors that lead to high satisfaction in their courses. And so we'll talk about ways to accomplish some of these during the presentation. So the quantity and quality of interactions with the instructor and their classmates. I mean, as experiential educators, we probably, all of us believe that learning is a social experience. It's at the core of what we do. And so how do we create those interactions between the students and the instructor and their classmates as well? Prompt and constructive instructor feedback. I know that's always been a challenge for me, but that is a huge contributor to student satisfaction in their courses, is getting that quickly so they can use that feedback for the next assignment. Clear course expectations, and then clear assignment instructions. And developing online content has really helped me design clear assignment instructions.
Bruce, from
Yep.
A couple of things. Your audio is a bit choppy, and I don't know
is it?
if you have a microphone on that maybe is causing that, or if there's anything you can do to fix that. And then there was a question about the last slide. When Swan found that there were no differences in student learning, what were they measuring?
I'd have to pull up that paper, which I could respond to that after the webinar. I'd have to pull it up and look at it.
Great, thanks.
Is that audio still choppy?
Sounds better.
Okay. I'll move the microphone closer. Okay. So, and then just some concepts that I put front and center when I'm designing my courses. And as members of AE, or experiential educators, this shouldn't be anything. This is probably stuff we're all doing, but I designed my courses to be student-centered. I give very few tests. If I give a quiz during a course, it's usually just something they need to memorize. I think the last quiz I gave was the missions of land management agencies. Quizzes have their place in, especially for some diagnostic assessments, but I get very few tests, and they're all problem-based assignments, whether that's videos, portfolios, things like that. I've really gotten into using place-based learning in my courses, and I'll show you a few examples of that as this presentation goes on. But especially if I have people from all over Idaho in my courses and some outside of Idaho, and designing assignments that let them explore their communities and use that as a foundation for learning has been really successful in my courses. So some ways that I do that are letting students identify what their local resources are, what their public lands are, and how they're managed, what kind of outdoor program providers are in those communities, and what equipment retailers are in the towns. For one of my courses, again, we'll go into this a little bit, having them design micro adventures to have them do human-powered activities throughout their community. And then using place mapping, which I'm going to incorporate in one of my courses next semester, just for students to conceptually identify areas of their community that are relevant to the class. So this is, again, I was really impressed with some of our micro adventure assignments from this semester, and I'll be excited to show you those in a little while. And really what's been probably one of my bigger successes is designing online assignments that transfer to our to field courses. And so I've actually anecdotally students that have done these online prep courses, whether it's designing a whitewater safety video or learning about whatever river we're going to be traveling on, have seen much more prepared for the field course than some of the in-person classes I've done. So how do we take, what content do they need to know prior to a field course so they can be successful when they move into that in-person portion where they haven't met anyone yet in person. So that's one of the key things that I focus on with my lessons. So just to kind of go into how I design courses, and this is kind of the model we used in that online certificate program I did, is the Community of Inquiry Theoretical Framework. And that relies on 3 different presences. The social presence, so how the students interact with each other, cognitive presence, how they interact with the content, and a teaching presence, how they interact with the instructor. So social presence, this allows the students to identify with each other and create a community within the online course, develop a trusting environment, and interpersonal relationships. So I use video a lot and have them post video so we can see faces, see facial expressions, hear how people talk. I think is really important to developing that community, and it sets the climate for learning and allows students to more comfortably interact with each other when they're doing discussion boards and other group assignments online. The teaching presence, so how they're interacting with the instructor and how the instructor is giving the students feedback is the teaching presence. And then the cognitive presence is how they're interacting with that content. So what content's being provided, if it's just reading, video, other kinds of, how are they learning, essentially, is the cognitive presence. We'll go more into those when I go into some of the assignment examples that I've used. As far as organizing courses, this was something that really confused me when I first started, is how to create a course online. And so it's just some key parts there, having a section for course information and resources, and then so that's syllabus, course assignments, the calendar, what assignments are worth. I constantly have to remind students how to actually write papers, and so there's a little link there on what's expected. Having an introduction discussion, and that's students posting videos of themselves, where they're from, what their spirit animal is or favorite animal is, things like that. And then we go into the course modules, and so that's where the specific content goes, the introduction, the formative assignments, and then the summative assignments, which we'll discuss in a minute. And then there's usually some kind of, instead of a final exam, I give some kind of cumulative assignment or final assignment that ties it all together, essentially. But one thing I wanted to bring up that my students have found really helpful are developing a rhythm chart. So they have a visual representation of when things are due. Self-discipline is super important. Time management is super important. So creating a rhythm chart like this, the green line is when assignments are assigned. You have student actions during this time, so the chapters they need to read. And then the assignments due are in red, so they stand out. And then what I'm doing during that time, communicating, giving feedback, grading, etc. Just so they're aware of what their responsibilities are at any given day of the week. From there, I'm designing the course assessments. And so that takes on 3 different types of assessments. So diagnostic assessments, formative assessments, and summative assessments. So the diagnostic assessments are how we're checking the students' prior knowledge. So students, especially I find in outdoor sports and activities, they've learned those, if they have any experience, they've learned them from a wide variety of sources. And so I want to know what they already know or what they think they already know. So different types of assessments I might use are a knowledge probe, pre and post tests, short discussion board, and I'll show you an example of all of these in a minute. Formative assessments, these kind of take the place of like an in-person lecture. A lot of times they're discussion boards where there's interaction between the students and the instructor, and it's a chance for students to start interacting with that content and get immediate feedback on their progress. So things like blogs, concept maps, journals, and then drafts and outlines of larger projects. And then summative assessments are assignments that demonstrate student proficiency. So things like case studies, papers, portfolios, presentations, video assignments, and things like that. So you can see I haven't really mentioned tests at all. I don't really use them a lot. So just some examples that I've used, and maybe this can give you some ideas how you would do that in one of your own courses. As a diagnostic assessment and a social presence assignment for my cross-country ski class, I have them find videos on what they think cross-country skiing is all about. And I apologize, some of these slides are a little wordy, but I wanted to give you a look at what the assignments were like. So this is actually a really interesting way for students to share their fears, what they're excited about, and it gives me a look at where they're coming from as they enter the class. So are they really worried they're going to fall and hit trees? Do I need to be worried about someone who thinks they can do spread eagles and tricks on their cross-country skis? I want to know who that person is before the class starts. So it gives us a good look, and it becomes a fun look at what students are excited about for the course or where they're coming from. As an example of a formative and cognitive presence assignment, I have students for my river recreation and watercraft safety course. They have to come up with their own safety video and post that in a discussion board for other students to see, and then other students provide feedback on what they missed, what they liked, and what they did well, and what they could have done better. So this is just an example of that assignment where they had to read the whitewater safety code, read the river guide for the lower salmon, which is where we operate, and create their own video. So I'll just show a minute, a few seconds of Emily here. It's one of my recent graduate with no graduation ceremony.
Yeah, your personal flotation device. First, you want to pull all the straps nice and tightly, working from the bottom to the top. If you have a rescue vest, make sure your harness is threaded properly, and that you have access to your quick release buckle.
So just an example there, a way students can be creative while still working through that content. Sorry about that. And then an example of a summative cognitive presence assignment was this, and I just used this for the first time. I just graded all of these 2 days ago. But I had students go on a micro adventure. So again, this ties in that place-based learning. They had an alternative option for if they were not able to move around in their communities freely. But they had to go on this micro adventure assignment, which is a largely human-powered adventure through their community. It had some kind of goal. So I gave them an example of one of my favorite ones that I would use in Moscow, Idaho, and then gave them what they needed to include in a portfolio or video type assignment. And so this ended up being such a positive assignment especially for COVID-19. I had students that are taking their families on adventures, doing bike rides and coming back and camping in the backyard. And the one that was really impressive was one of my distance students from Boise. Him and his brother left their house on bikes and did an all-day adventure of the Boise foothills. So they're learning about local land management on their trip, taking in social distancing procedures while they're out, and kind of exploring places they wouldn't normally get out to because they're so close to home. So really connecting people with their environment and the content that we learned in our Intro to Outdoor Rec and Adventure Sport class. there any questions before we move on to challenges and opportunities? Are there any questions on what we've talked about so far?
First, we're still having some trouble with the sound. People are saying it's a little bit choppy.
Still choppy?
Yeah, you're just coming in and out a little bit.
Don't always have the best internet in the mountains here.
Yeah, it's workable, definitely.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Any questions regarding the presentation so far?
Somebody asked if you could show the previous slide again, so the one right before this Boise Foothill one. And yeah. Someone
sorry
else,
about all this.
We can hear what you're saying, no worries. So. And then Joe Ellen, I think, is maybe still typing a question. It says how do. So we'll move on from that one.
Okay. And so just to add with this micro adventure assignment, this was an assignment that came out of our university stopping in-person classes. They were originally supposed to take part in organized outdoor program activity, and when everything shut down for COVID-19, I was like, how do we create an assignment that gets students outside still? Because to have an outdoor recreation class and not do any outdoor recreation would be almost sacrilegious to me. So had to think about it for a little bit, and this is what we came up with, and the students seemed to really appreciate that they had that opportunity. Cool. Did that question pop up?
So how do you deal with older adult learners who are not as tech savvy?
I don't have too many older adult learners. I have a few, and I haven't had too many challenges there. I have a lot of students who are not tech savvy, which goes against kind of that stereotype. And so, because Idaho is a really rural state, and we're a land grant university, and so I have students without smartphones still, if you can believe that. So one of the things we do at the beginning of the course and some of those diagnostic assessments is like teaching them how to use the content management system. And then one of the challenging things is teaching them how to put videos up in a way that like works with our CMS. And so they get worked with one-on-one for that. We point them toward the resources at the university that can help them. But I had probably a half dozen meetings at the beginning of the semester helping students through some of this. And our CMS isn't the easiest to use. And so it just ends up being one-on-one interactions with those students. Did that answer that?
Yeah, great. A couple other ones have popped up. Do you always have an in-person field class that goes with the online courses?
No, so this 107 class where we did the micro adventure is my only class I teach that doesn't have that I don't teach as a hybrid. So this is my only class that's completely online as far as my instruction. So most of my outdoor courses are hybrids. So we'll either meet for a weekend or whatever the trip length is in Moscow where the university is, or in some cases, we're meeting on location. So when I was supposed to teach an avalanche course this semester, and we were just going to meet in Joseph, Oregon, which is where the Wolauta Mountains are, where our course is going to take place. And so that lets our distance learners, the people that aren't in Moscow, Idaho, travel just directly from where they are.
Great.
It also saves me a lot of logistics because I'm not renting vans anymore and driving them myself.
That is true. 2 questions about your alternative assignment. What was the alternative assignment to getting out into the community for those who could not explore freely? And then what was the alternative assignment if they could move around for a micro adventure?
So the alternative assignment was to write, unfortunately, was to write a paper. And so a lot of the content of this course was basic outdoor leadership theory. And so I had them analyze a case study of the Tunnel Creek avalanche accident in Stevens Pass, Washington, just because it was highly documented and there was a lot of mistakes or things to talk about from a outdoor leadership standpoint of that led to that accident and then how the accident was handled. And so it was just ended up being a case study analysis for their alternative assignment. The micro adventure was their other option. So we have a lot of students from Washington State that couldn't leave their house essentially during the time when this was assigned. And so I wanted to make sure they had an alternative to be going outside. And this is also a course that a lot of our general recreation students take, not just our outdoor recreation students. And so if students weren't comfortable going outside, or if they couldn't find anyone to go with, I didn't want them to feel forced to go outside or go on an adventure if they weren't comfortable. So part of this assignment was also like analyzing their personal competencies and what they were felt comfortable doing. So they have one of those two options. I think in normal times, I'd probably just have either the micro adventure or the organized assignment to take part in an organized outdoor activity.
And one last question, how do you assign grades on the summative assignments?
So it's super time consuming. I think if I spent about 20 minutes per student grading their assignments, and there was 22 students. So I think that comes out to over 7 hours of grading. One of the ways that I found to be pretty efficient with that is by designing rubrics for grading. And that way I can just kind of run through it, give quick feedback based on the criteria. That's how they get feedback on the summative assignments most of the time. The discussion boards for like the formative assignments, it's whether they're right or wrong, they don't usually lose too many points, or if their answers are detailed or undetailed, they don't lose too many points, but there's a lot of writing and giving feedback on those assignments as well. So that's that time consuming part. Feedback where you could give it in class and discuss it with a group. Now you're like typing all of it individually for everyone. At least I am so far. But rubrics have been really helpful as far as efficiency.
Great.
Cool. We can move on into challenges and opportunities for online education, and then we can have a discussion as long as folks want. So one of the huge challenges, biggest challenge I faced is with student motivation. I think, as I mentioned, with my partner's two daughters, one of them loves it and one of them does not love it. And so when we had a huge challenge as we switched our program to hybrid and online courses, a lot of students that are in our program, it's just not what they signed up for. It's not what they wanted. And so that was really challenging because they're used to having class one way and then we totally switch it. So, so it does require student motivation. And it requires really good time management skills and self-discipline, both from instructors and students. And so if your students aren't prepared for that, I think they're going to struggle a lot. And that's what we have found in our courses. I have some students that love it and they turn in high quality work. That student from Boise that did the micro adventure, really high quality work, really good reading comprehension skills, really good critical thinking skills. But students that aren't as skilled in those areas may struggle. And so it takes a lot of coaching from instructors to help bring students up to speed on some of that. So that's been one challenge, is the student motivation. If it's not what they want, they're likely not going to be successful. And I think that's why a lot of us have seen students when all the schools went online mostly after spring break. I lost some students. They just disappeared. I reached out to them like, hey, let's meet. Nothing. So, and part of that plays into not having access to the resources, which we'll talk about also. One of the huge advantages, and I think this is well documented, is flexibility. It allows students to work and live according to their particular situation. So if students need to work, they can work. They can do this on their own time. I think in the word map, someone put the word asynchronous down, and I teach all of my courses asynchronously. So that way students can do it when they want. The deadlines are there to keep them on track, but they have the flexibility to do this around their schedule. One of the ways I'm selling this to the outdoor recreation students, who are probably the least likely to enjoy online learning, and especially in the state of Idaho, where guiding is a family tradition in some cases, and it's woven into the fabric of the state, is students can still work while they're getting their education. So I have so many students that have to give up end their raft guide season early, or they're working, they're fighting fires for the Forest Service and they start late, or they have to stop guiding for mule deer season because they have to go back to school. Students can now work through their seasons in the outdoor field while still working on their education. And that's a real selling point, I think, because I've often talked about how students don't get enough work experience in college for outdoor activities and outdoor recreation. And so this is a way that they can do that. And so having that flexibility is really important. The students are working so much now. I have students that work 40 hours a week and go to school. This makes that a little easier for them. This has been really front and center, I think, with COVID-19, is the access to resources. Not all students have the technology at home if they're at home, and not all are really comfortable reaching out to instructors, which is something I found to be a struggle this semester, this past semester. So I was talking to one of our friends here in Durango, is the principal of the elementary school, and the middle school, and they lost 30% of their students when they went online this year. And that's just students, mostly lower income students, that don't have access to technology and don't have a way to complete their schoolwork at home. And that's been a real challenge for universities and publics and grade schools alike. So that's a real challenge we have. And I don't have a good answer, but we talk a lot about online education is accessible to a lot of people, but it's not accessible to huge parts of our population. Advantage, if online education is done well, it can be tailored to the learner. And so we talked about introverts. Man, that would be a real advantage to me, is that because I'm someone who doesn't speak up. I never spoke up in class. I would sit in the back and be quiet. I would do the work. But the online environment can create a space for students who wouldn't otherwise participate to the fullest. It gives them a chance to do that through discussion boards and having time to think and write and come up with their answers. I'm a bit of a slow thinker, a bit of a processor, and I never felt like I had time to get answers out. And so the online learning creates a space for that. Students can investigate areas of the subject that are of particular interest to them. So part of that student-centered learning is students can come up with within the boundaries of the assignment, can come up with their own areas they want to work on and investigate. If students really interested in doing a microadventure via bike, they can do that. If they would rather go hiking, they can do that. So they have a lot of freedom within the boundaries of the assignment on what they can choose to look at. And then time constraints are largely removed. There's deadlines for assignments, but they have plenty of time to do them. They're not in a rush. It's not an hour and 15-minute class. They can take as much time to think and work through the material as they need. As far as perspective from me, again, coming from the viewpoint of like an adventure educator and someone who really values that field time, there are huge time sucks in this. Course design, discussion boards, creating content takes a lot more time than it does in person, at least for me. And the providing feedback, it takes a lot more time than it would if you had everyone in the same room. It's just a lot of time. And again, that time management thing isn't just for students, it's for instructors as well. And so I just have times that I blocked off on my calendar. And then once that time starts, I shut my computer down and just, or shut my email down and just start working on giving feedback so I can get that out in a timely fashion. I do appreciate the flexibility in hours and location of where I'm able to work from. That a lot, like if it's sunny out, I can go for a run and then come back inside when it's raining in the afternoon and do work or whatever. So that flexibility, as long as like the time management skills are dialed in, is really works for me really well. It's a lot of computer time, which isn't that great for. I don't really appreciate that as much. So that's just a downside. You're in front of your computer a lot more than I would be if I was teaching traditionally. Uncertainty, especially as I've been learning how to teach online. I'm not sure how assignments will go over with students. And as it turns out, some of my best assignments that were the most successful assignments I used this semester were the ones I was the most uncertain about. But you just, without seeing students face to face, you're not sure of their engagement. And you're not sure about, I think academic honesty is a little harder to sort out as well. So just a lot of uncertainty, for me, not being able to like see my students. Some of the things I found to be really useful are just to be available, be able to meet with students frequently, be honest with students, be clear and articulate with what you expect from them. My students have seemed to really appreciate that. And then if I had to, like a lot of my classes are hybrid, as was asked before. And I think just the judgment and applied leadership issues would be really hard to teach online. I'm not sure how I would do that. So I think for experiential educators, that's like a limiter, is when you need to have students demonstrate applied leadership or judgment type things. It's really hard to assess that online. But the last positive is I've actually used online learning to increase the field time expectations from our students. So almost all my field courses increased by a day, at least, as we move to this hybrid and online teaching model. And so I've used it as an excuse to get them out in the field a little more, where that applied learning can take place. We can open it up to questions, concerns, anything you guys want to chat about, maybe your perspectives on teaching or the challenges you've had specifically this year. Yeah, time is yours, I guess.
Great. Bruce, we have some questions in the question and answer that we can definitely do, but if somebody wants to share with their own voice, you can raise your hand and we can make that happen. You know, things that are happening right now, sometimes it's easier to say them in your own voice than type them out. But we'll wait and see if anybody wants to. And the questions in the question and answer are, how can we create meaningful experiences in online team building programs?
Yeah, that is the one class I haven't designed yet because I've been nervous to do it. And I've given it a lot of thought. I think one of the slides I had in here was, and I took it out just for the time's sake, was what I'm going to do next. And so one of the challenges I've had with online learning is there's so many like add-ons and like different online teaching programs that you can use, but I think one of the things I'm really looking forward to doing is more video teaching and more video assignments. And so I think there's definitely icebreakers you can do online, like as a discussion board, two truths and a lie, for instance. But I have not, I'll be honest, I have not sorted out my team building class yet. And I think I'd gone back and forth of whether I was going to teach that as a hybrid or in person. And I think I'm definitely back to hybrid on it. Because I think you can teach the basics. You can teach how to design one, how to facilitate one. But when it actually comes to facilitating, you need people to do that. And so maybe you'd have a person gather a group of, like, create their own team building program and video that as they do it from what they've learned. That's about the only thing I've come up with as far as doing that from a distance.
And Santosh, there are a couple other programs, Project Adventure and High Five. They've both been working on those specific team building things. Michelle Cummings with Training Wheels, several of AE's members have been really developing kind of that online team building program, and there are things around that, and you can find those resources on our website.
I'm definitely going to look at that.
Yeah, there's some good stuff happening out there, definitely.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one of the nice things that's happening right now is resources like that are becoming more and more available in the past few months. And so we're seeing it in the American Mountain Guides Association. We're seeing it in the ACA, or the canoeing ACA, that there's just many more video and strategy resources available out there right now. And so it's almost overwhelming. And I've definitely filed some away, like for winter as I get closer to look through as I start designing my avalanche courses or redesigning them. So, yeah.
Oh, yes. And people have been posting in the chat more resources. Amy Clymer and Playmio also doing great things. Thank you, Greg, for posting the Project Adventure workshops. And that's all in the chat box. So some really, really excellent resources there. I just wanted to take a moment. I know we are getting close to an hour. I appreciate you all being here. Bruce is going to stay and answer some questions, but we understand that if you need to go, that is a thing that needs to happen. And again, check out ae.org for resources. Let us know what we can do for you during this time. Webinars are pretty open. If you have some information to share, just email me, and Anna will put my email in the chat box for me while I'm talking. And let me know what you have to offer. Everybody's been so great about offering their information and their experiences, and I think it's been an amazing show in our community of how much we can share and how well we can do working together. So I appreciate everyone, and have a good day or evening wherever you're going, and we'll continue to answer questions, but just want to say goodbye to everyone who asked it.
Yep, thank you.
Bruce, the next question is, what program do you use for conversation boards?
So our university uses BB Learn, and so I've been using their discussion boards. They're a little challenging to use. I'm switching discussions to blogs, their blog function right now for my classes going forward. I'm also looking at Google Classroom's chat functions a little more, and using Google Classroom to set some things up for both my academic courses and like pre-course learning for avalanche and swiftwater rescue courses that I teach. So, but I try to do as much as I can within our university's content management system. I'm also looking into VoiceThread for discussions and to put content on, but I think so far I've really focused on just the design and not as much the technology. So again, one of those moving forward things that I'm looking at is what other add-ins and technology type things that are out there that can use to get this information more user-friendly. But I know if you've got Canvas, if you're working at a college or university and have Canvas, I think that's a lot nicer. Probably shouldn't say that on the webinar.
Yeah, and I know people have been putting in the chat some other resources, Jamboard and Mural and Muri. There's some really good ones out there.
Yeah, and I just designed I had to cancel it. I was going to teach a swiftwater rescue course using Google Classroom for a lot of the pre-course content. I've found that to be really easy. I took an Avalanche course that used it as well. It's just super clean the way it lays things out. So.
Awesome. Have any of your courses been delivered synchronously? If so, how did you handle it, and tips for that?
I have successfully avoided teaching a synchronous class. As being that introvert, I'm not too psyched about being on video most of the time for posterity. But I have done synchronous portions of my courses. So I've had some guest speakers come in, and it's recorded, but students can attend it synchronously as well. And so it's like what Sherry's doing. She's the moderator. I bring in the guest speaker, and I'm like moderating the discussion between that and my students. That seemed to go really well. And I think that's something, again, as I move forward, I'm going to incorporate more of that, either giving students a synchronous option and recording it so other students can see it later, just to increase that connection with students and that social presence for students.
How do you link content and learning to students' outdoor work experiences?
How do I link it?
Mm-hmm.
How do I link content? So a lot of it, if I understand the question, content students.
And Siobhan, if you can elaborate more, if you're still on the call, if you can elaborate more in the chat box, that'd be great. I think it came when you were speaking about the students who maybe were wildfire working on wildfire lines, or they were working with their parents as guides or things like that.
Sure. Yeah. So like I try not to. I try to create boundaries in my assignments for students to work within, but they get to choose what they write about. So an example would be like I had an assignment this semester where it was write about a leader that you respect, and what leadership characteristics from the reading did they employ in the situation or whatever. And so a lot of students would write about their coaches. I had to stop students from writing about their parents because they were just too personal. But a lot of people wrote, like, that's an opportunity for students to write about, like, maybe the boss that they work for. So they can choose that arena within the boundaries of that assignment with what they write about. And it's hard, like some of it's hard for me when I have a student that writes about hunting and fishing guiding. Like I don't know much about that. It gives me that's an opportunity for me to learn a little more. But so yeah, it's just like not being too specific about exactly what they write about and just giving them those boundaries to work within. I hope that answered it.
I think so. Yeah. Do you have recommendations on incentivizing/motivating the completion of program assignments for participants who are part of out-of-school programs? In other words, there isn't a grade at the end to motivate them.
I guess I haven't used that at all, so I'm not sure I have a good suggestion there. Everything I teach, there's usually an outcome the students want, whether it's a grade so they can pass, or some kind of certification or course completion. And so, yeah, I guess I don't have a good answer for that. I think it comes down to, I think if you're going to use that, it just comes down to student motivation. I know if I didn't have points or like some kind of carrot at the end, a lot of my students wouldn't be motivated to finish. They would just kind of blow it off.
Have you thought about how you could still deliver a hybrid course this fall if you have to deal with COVID issues?
Ugh. I'm pretending that problem doesn't exist. Yes, I have, and I had to do that with my avalanche course this spring, where we did not have it was like I missed the opportunity to teach it by about 2 weeks. Yeah, I think there's lots of ways to teach outcomes. I had to remove the level 1 certification from the course, and that was unfortunate because I lost a bunch of students because of that. But yeah, I mean, I think you just have to adjust your outcomes and do the best you can. And get, a lot of it's going to be theoretical. Because when I have to teach river recreation watercraft safety, and they're not actually going to be able to swim a rapid. I would use a lot of video, but students aren't going to feel that. And so I think it's just is what it is until the pandemic's over. I am optimistic that I'm going to be able to teach my hybrid classes, but with precautions in place. Like I usually make everyone camp under the same tarps. Like we'll probably do individual tarps or something like that. But yeah, I think we just have to adjust our outcomes a little bit and do the best we can, which isn't a great answer, but.
Yeah, I'd refer, again, there's a lot of guidance coming out right now from the CDC and the American Camping Association. I know
the ACA stuff is really good.
Yeah, and the mountain guides are working on. So there are people out there trying to help and make sure that we can do the things that we do, but do them safely. So yeah.
I mean, I haven't figured out a way to do it that wouldn't diminish the overall experience, and that's too bad.
Yeah. What type, we have about 5 more questions, Bruce, if you want to answer them or
Sure.
Okay. What types of help have you gotten from peers in developing this new content, or did you feel more out on your own?
That's a great question. I initially felt out on my own. Because not many people are doing it, especially the types of courses I teach. There were places to start. I'm good friends with a wilderness first responder provider. So I was able to chat with him about it at the AOR AE conference. I know I teach avalanche courses through ARI, and so I was able to look at their online content. And our university does have we're part of the College of Education, and we do have a online learning center there. And so I was able to pick their brains a bit as well. And then fortunately, again, I was able to take that online certificate. Was really, until I took that, I felt like I was pretty out on my own. And then I had to step away from modifying my assignments to being taught at a distance and just start creating new assignments, I think was one big realization I had. And just learning I use the technology I need, but I don't go out seeking new technology all the time. And so that's one of my next steps, is finding better technology, things to use in my courses. But it was lonely for a little bit, especially in when we first started doing it, because I think I know of one other university that's teaching hybrid outdoor recreation courses. But I think as I dug and asked, then I felt a little less lonely and kind of found some camaraderie amongst people. So I think talking with folks at my presentation at AOR and AE it was nice to know I wasn't the only one out there.
It's good.
And the resources are there if you look, I think.
Yeah, and now definitely you're not the only one out there.
Yeah,
So.
for sure.
Do you feel all tips are applicable to younger students? Are there areas to emphasize with elementary and middle school audience? I don't know if you have any experience with that group at all, but that's the question.
The only experience I have with that age group is my partner's 13-year-old. She's in the 7th grade, finishing 7th grade online. And I think I don't have any like real advice, but what I know what she's missing is interaction with your peers. And so figuring out a way to keep that interaction, and she's not really into the big Zoom classes. I think they were trying to do that. And so figuring out a way to keep that social interaction. I mean, it's a fundamental part of experiential education. It's really important, especially for younger kids. But I don't have a lot of experience with that age group.
Rini, we're having roundtable conversations with K through 12 educators on Mondays at 2. And so that might be a helpful resource for you also, to come to that and talk to people who are working with that age group. Hopefully that you can find some help there. Dave asks, can you go into place-based focus a little more? Culture, environment, sustainability examples, please.
Sure. Let me think of some examples. And again, this is still somewhat new to me. So I use place-based education so far to get students more familiar with their local resources and community resources. But I think there's lots of things that you can do as far as culture. So you can design assignments to figure out, to explore some local historical landmarks in their area where they have to travel to those. I always like to encourage human power travel and get to those cultural resources and investigate that. I wish my co-presenter from AOR was able to come today. She talked a lot about sustainability and sustainable food systems. She had students go to grocery stores and look at prices between organic, non-organic foods. Start to have the students investigate where those foods came from before they were at the grocery store by talking to people in the stores. And so I think you can really tailor it to almost any kind of learning, content you want, because a lot of those things are pretty consistent in people's communities. I'm not sure that totally answered the question.
Great, and I know I saw that Julie Carlson was on this call earlier. I know she's done a place-based workshop for AE before, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you can send people out your recycling centers, learn where that goes. I know one of the assignments I'm going to do is at least encourage students to visit, for my river recreation class next year, visit the dam that's nearby that's blocking the lower Snake River, which is a big issue in Idaho, are the lower granite dams on the Snake River. So they'll be able to go look at, investigate that, or visit places where there's significant geological features that they can investigate on their own under the boundaries of an assignment. And so I think it's just getting people out away from their computer and doing something is really important.
Great. Our last question is, can you recommend any resources for learning about and/or creating rhythm charts?
Microsoft Excel. For learning, I use that as a template, and if you email me after the presentation, I can provide the template I used, because figuring out how to move those cells around can be challenging. But I think just any kind of InDesign or any kind of things where you can move blocks of content around the page, like Word's a little challenging, but you could do it in a table in Word. But yeah, I can provide, if you want, I can provide that example, or it would be up on the webinar after. But yeah, it's just assignments assigned, student responsibilities, assignments due, professor responsibilities are the ones that I use. I actually have a whole bunch of them I can send out to. There's a bunch of different types of examples of those. So whoever asked that, send me an email and I can get that to you.
Grace will make sure you get Bruce's information. That's all the questions in the Q&A. I don't know if I missed any in the chat box. Looks like we took care of most of them. So yeah, any final remarks, Bruce?
Nope. Thanks for everyone for tuning in, and I hope it was helpful. And feel free to reach out if you have any other specific questions or things you want to hash out. I'm happy to email, or everyone's so good at Zoom now. I'm happy to share. Like I said, I'm definitely still learning. It was probably evident by some of the answers I gave, but I'm really interested in hearing what other people are doing as well. And like, there's not a lot of good answers for the problems that we're facing with the pandemic, but we're all in it together, as they say, and the more we can work together, the better answers we come up with.
Great. Bruce, thank you so much for taking your time and providing this content and information today. We really appreciate it. And there is another webinar that AE produced, was our first one by Kurt Davidson, and it is about online learning also, and some really good content in there. So if you're looking for some other things around this subject, please check out that one. And everybody stay safe and wash your hands and be good. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, and thanks, Sherry. Thanks, Anna.
Yeah.